right, cool. So I'm just going to dive straight into this. This is a heavy topic. But I want to kick it off by saying navigation optimization came around. Essentially, I was agency side doing a lot of best practices and seeing zero impact. It was insanely frustrating. And then I got this magical client that kind of changed my life. They came in and they had this animated drop-down navigation that broke the more you used it and had about 6 pages of indexable, readable content, which was just nuts when they were in an extremely, extremely competitive environment. So I said, okay, guys, let's hold our horses here, and let's actually dive into what's going on in your user experience, because how can we as SEOers put out content on a site that doesn't allow you to scale whatsoever? So for us, I think the best place to start is really diving into how do you diagnose what's going on, like what defines a bad navigation? So what are some of the usual suspects? So the first one is the concept of simple is better. No, not better, best. This is so common nowadays. With Mobilegeddon, or as I like to say, Mobile First-ageddon, we're seeing all of these websites like this, a desktop with, where's that navigation? Oh, there it is. It's infuriating for all of us. And granted, I am very huge when it comes to mobile first. I'm all about redesigns and making sure that our website caters to all of these different platforms. However, using your mobile design, especially, this is a B2B company, using your mobile design on a site that only gets 25% mobile traffic is a problem. There is a recent study done by the Nielsen Norman Group, amazing, amazing study, by the way. They tested 179 different individuals across 3 different navigation types. We've got the hidden navigation, which is your hamburger menu that we just saw, a combo navigation, which is extremely normal, that drop-down navigation, as well as a visible navigation structure. And they tested that across desktop and mobile. What's fascinating about this is look at how much time it takes for someone to find the navigation. Comparing the combo nav and the hidden nav, it takes 8 more seconds on desktop to find the navigation. That is huge in a time that we don't measure in seconds anymore, we measure in microseconds. The next one that I decided to highlight, they actually go into really great detail. Download this, read this, it's amazing. Content discoverability. Content discoverability declines over 20% when a user went from using a combo nav to a hidden nav on both desktop and mobile. A 20% drop. We need to be cognizant of this as marketers. It is our job to make sure that we are providing the right user experience for people to access the great content that we're putting out there. And so, agency side, I was diving into conversations with the developers, with the designers saying, excuse me, but your navigation is broken. We can't actually access pages because the animation faults and we're stuck on the home page. Now the next one is pushing the envelope too far on design and aesthetics. We are probably all aware that this is happening, especially in 2016, websites are starting to look like this. And this was actually featured in an article that was talking about the latest trends of like 2016 design. As far as Google's concerned, well, number 1, where's that nav? Oh, there it is. Number 2, this is what this website looks like, as far as Google's concerned. Now, I'm showing you an extreme to prove a point here. Those sorts of trends, this sort of stuff, feeds into how redesigns go and how we, as normal marketers that probably don't do as much outbound as they do, and more inbound, this feeds into how our websites look. And so we really need to be aware of what is this design doing to our site and our user experience. Is it hiding content? Actually, on one of my client sites, we discovered that the blog didn't actually exist because the design team wanted it to dynamically display, and there's 3 years of just 3 years of content that was nowhere to be found. One-page sites, I'm not gonna, like this one, it has been hammered home. As far as anyone is concerned, when it comes to a one-page site, it is not a good thing, and Google, again, the only thing that exists is your homepage, and like a weird About Us page that lives somewhere else. But again, you only get rankability for this one page. And then the final one, my favorite, especially because, again, the heavy emphasis on B2B agency side, narcissistic navigation. This is a navigation that literally only feeds into terminology that your marketing team uses. Yes, you guys are great at using your site. Your sales team is great at using your site. You know who isn't? New users. They have no idea what to do with your own internally created concepts as a navigation. So all the time we would take this and turn it into something like this. This is a very standard B2B navigation structure. Now, what is the goal of a website anyway? You guys will probably recognize this. The marketing funnel. We need to make users aware that we exist. We have to help them consider us. We have to help them convert on our site, and we have to retain them. I bring this up because, yes, we are all aware. We're like, yes, we love the marketing funnel, but it actually doesn't get applied to many websites. Again, why we all have jobs. And especially us agency side, when you end up on these websites that are the Frankenstein's monster of the sales team and the marketing team and the social media team all putting content together, but it ends up somewhere in the corner, and the core of the website doesn't address any of these core subjects. So now let's get tactical. This is my favorite part of this stuff. So first thing you need to do to diagnose and fix what I like to call a wonkadoodle navigation. It's not really a word, but it's a thing. You need to utilize your marketing personas. So we need to be empathetic marketers. We need to step outside of ourselves and step into the shoes of the people that we're marketing to and go through our sites. Actually do this. And for those of us, again, agency side folks, when you first get a client and you complain to your client, hey, by the way, I'm not really sure I can use your site, or I'm not really sure what's going on here. If you have that gut feeling that you're not super aware of, like, where's everything located, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't know their product well enough. It may be a sign that their site just isn't organized well enough. So really try to be your persona and step through your website as that person and see if you can meet each of those different goals of the funnel. Or, of course, you could run a usability test, which we all know what those are. I had a client who I kept telling them, like, your navigation, it's just not right, it's not right. They ran a usability test finally, and they're like, oh, hey, you SEO person, you're right. It doesn't work. This is all of the people that were in the test. Extremely valuable information here. Google Analytics session data. So this is an actual example of a client. When I dive into Google Analytics and I look at session data to identify if there's gaps in my user experience, if there's bottlenecks, what I like to look at, I like to segment it out, and I compare everything back to all users. So here I've pulled out sessions with transaction, I pulled out sessions with conversions. Look at these numbers. Bounce rate, as expected, is actually pretty low because these people engaged. Sessions with transaction, 12.63 pages to convert, and an average session duration of 15.5 minutes. The general manager of the company was in on this meeting, and she looks at me and she says, so you're telling me we're making it difficult for people to give us money? I was like, yes, you are making it extremely difficult for people to give you money. And again, this is an average. Take yourself through your buying process. Do not be a step away from your website. You are your website. Go through that. I went through that process. It was miserable. I had to pick up the phone and call my own community reps to help figure out how to use my own website. Keyword rank analysis. Now this actually connects really well to what Dr. Pete was saying earlier. What you need to do when you're running a keyword rank analysis is get your keywords and then apply those keywords to a category or a concept, just like he was talking about this morning. Then take that concept, look at where it's ranking, or look at where the keyword is ranking, and look at that ranking URL and ask yourself, is this the right URL to be ranking there? This is a question that gets missed time and time again when we're doing optimizations. We say, hey, we're on page 2 for this blog from 2014 for running shoes. Well, page 6 here, but ignore that. How about we just rank higher? How about we just optimize that page? No. How do you know that you shouldn't do that? Because apply your categories to the stage in your funnel. And immediately you can identify, aha, so based on this category and all these keywords that have been grouped into this category and this stage in the funnel, I know what type of content needs to be created here. And it's probably not going to be a blog content piece per se. So this is an extremely helpful move to make when you are developing out your new navigation structure. And honestly, I'm being dead serious. I use my keyword list to develop out my navigation. Now, to be fair, I don't use, you have to caveat and make room for the fact that there are going to be some intangibles. There's going to be some places in your navigation that doesn't necessarily have search volume, but that's where your personas come into play. And so as I'm developing out my keyword categories and aligning them with funnel stages, I then place them into a hierarchy, and this is where Excel, my love, comes into play. And I take everything and I just keep lumping them and lumping them and lumping them together. And what you'll find is all of your product-based keywords will lump together into a product section. All of your solution-based keywords will eventually lump together in a solutions-based section. Or in this instance, we've got shoes. Those will probably lump together eventually by gender or by type. But this is so key, and it's so simple. At the end of the day, navigations are so simple. We're here to tell the story of our company to people accessing our website, so why do we make it so hard? And then finally, I take all this information, put it in Excel, create a new column, and say, okay, what's my URL? And I don't care what is currently ranking. I go through and I decide myself based on the funnel stage that this category needs to be, or this keyword group needs to focus on. I decide this is the kind of content I need here. Now immediately I can see what's ranking and decide, okay, do I need to refresh that? Do I need to add in a new page? When I did this for my client I was mentioning in the beginning, we added, I think, over 70 new pages to the site and added around 20 to the navigation. Just insane. But doing something like this, kicking off your campaign like this, or refreshing your site with this, you're immediately unlocking so much information. Implementation, double, triple, quadruple, check your work. This is essentially a redesign you're going through. 301s, get them in place. Update your sitemap, check Google Analytics, and Search Console, of course. Now, impact. This is what happened to that first client I was talking to you guys about. This is what happened. This went from about $5,000 a month to, by the time I left the agency, around $50,000. It's insane. This is not link building. This is purely content organization, restructuring, and developing out new content and making it accessible to users. And the beauty of having a site that works and is it's a positive feedback loop. So what you can end up doing is you create content, people can access that content, and the more they access it, the higher it ranks, because Google says, oh, hey, that's relevant. And so it's just insane how much growth we saw. Of course, they were stoked, had to rebuild out their entire sales team because we gave them too many conversions from it. And this is another example of a client who had a lot of bad SEO they got hit with, and then went through redesign, kept segmenting out content, and then we came in and said, okay, let's kind of rethink your navigation structure, immediately unlock those bottlenecks, and saw immediate growth again. It just comes down to thinking about it from a very organized standpoint. So here are some final thoughts on this. Your navigation tells the story of your website to your users and search engines. Avoid the narcissistic navigation. As great as it is that it exists because it maintains us having job security as SEOers, it is really frustrating. Do not let that happen. And you don't need to go whole hog immediately. This is a massive undertaking to do. But that being said, one of my favorite things to do internally, I put this all together. I have Robyn's ideal navigation mock-up. And then I present that to the client, or I present that to my team, and they say, okay, we can't do all of this. I say, that's fine. Let's do this piece right here. And so we just do one section at a time. But when you show this insane results from such a small section, suddenly there's buy-in. Much like we've been hearing with A/B testing, much like we've been hearing with test, test, test. Use a small piece, prove that this works, and then immediately, the number of clients that I had go through redesigns, one of them is here right now, it was just insane how they're like, all right, this seems to work. Let's redesign, or let's at least restructure how our navigation is focused. And you just see these immediate results. And finally, have fun with it. What we do as marketers is awesome. We are the detectives of the internet. We get to sift through data and understand how people work. And this is the best way to take that information, put it into practice, and see immediate results from it. Thank you guys so much. This has been awesome.
That was really good. You increased my vocabulary by about 10% with made-up words.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a couple of questions. How do you marry accessible navigation UX with, accessible navigation UX with excessive internal linking?
That's a great question. So one thing, and it's kind of an intangible answer, and I wish that I could answer this succinctly for every single person out there. But there is a gut feeling that you get when you're looking at a navigation and there's too much going on. I am not a believer of take all your links and put it in the nav. You need, again, to use your personas to understand what does somebody need to have from a high-level standpoint that any page they access my site from organic, right? Because in organic, you can end up on any page of the site, but what needs to be up there so that they can access all parts of that user funnel and really get to the level of information that they need. But it's such an intangible. It really depends from company to company.
Well, one thing that was being mentioned to me by Rob off stage is that like a lot of fashion companies will use denim in their navigation when what they mean is jeans.
Yeah.
You know, like the bias of the people who are making the product versus the people who are buying the product.
Exactly.
Is something that makes things more difficult.
I've actually gotten into arguments with clients over you're using X terminology, but your customer base has no idea or they don't care about that. So we have to go with what they're doing.
So another one, can you run tests on making these kinds of changes? Is there any way to check what the outcome might be before you do it all?
I personally have not. What I end up doing is, like I mentioned at the end, not going whole hog immediately, doing a small piece of it in a section of your website. Like literally what we did is found like some solutions pages and actually just put one of them in the navigation to see how much impact that page would get from a visibility standpoint within the site itself, as well as from an organic ranking standpoint. And that kind of helps you understand how much leverage your site has with certain terms. But there's, again, so many intangibles that the testing piece of it, besides showing two different examples of your site and then testing it from a user standpoint, it's very hard from a Google search standpoint to have two versions of your site showing.
I'll bet that the same is true of what Alex was talking about too, right? This is going to be something that's working a lot better on bigger sites that already have some authority rather than,
Yes,
like
that is a key. I'm glad you brought that up. This is something that you see results like that when you already have a company that has really decent domain authority and is extremely competitive, and what they're missing is the content piece.
Do you think the DA threshold that he gave is about right too, like between 30 and 40,
yeah.
like in that range?
Again, depending on industry, but like in the B2B world, 30, 40, 50, you're like spot on and being extremely competitive.
All right, well, thank you so much. That was
great.